Mark Thompson's hands trembled as he watched the Manhattan Hotel concierge hand his wife, Laura, a crisp envelope. Inside was a divorce letter, his final stand against her web of lies. Her carefree laughter with another man still burned in his memory. But this moment was his first step toward reclaiming his life. Would she unravel, or was something bigger waiting to surface? Mark, a 45-year-old financial advisor, lived a steady life in a charming Brooklyn brownstone. His days revolved around client meetings, spreadsheets, and the quiet satisfaction of a well-ordered routine. Methodical and reserved, he found comfort in predictability, his sharp mind always one step ahead in the world of numbers. His wife, Laura, 40, was his opposite, a vibrant graphic designer whose bold murals brought color to local cafes. Her infectious energy had once filled their home with warmth, her creativity spilling into every corner. A single framed mural in their living room, a swirl of blues and golds, hinted at their shared history. Married for 12 years, they seemed the perfect couple to outsiders, their differences a balance that worked. But beneath the surface, a quiet fracture had begun to grow. 6 months ago, Mark first noticed a shift. Laura, once open and talkative, grew distant. Her phone buzzed constantly, messages she'd quickly hide with a forced smile. He brushed it off as work stress. Her latest mural project was demanding, she'd said. But the unease settled in his chest, a nagging weight he couldn't shake. He tried to bridge the gap with small gestures, like bringing home her favorite coffee from the corner deli, hoping to spark the connection they'd once had. Her responses were polite but hollow, her eyes darting to her phone as if it held a secret she couldn't share. One evening, while doing laundry, Mark found a crumpled receipt in Laura's jacket pocket. It was from a trendy rooftop bar in Soho, dated a night she'd claimed to be working late at her studio. The discovery hit him like a cold wave. Why hadn't she mentioned it? He wanted to believe it was innocent. A client meeting, perhaps, but the receipt listed 2 cocktails and a shared dessert, too intimate for a casual outing. He slipped it into his pocket, telling himself he'd ask her later, hoping for a simple explanation. But deep down, a seed of doubt took root, whispering that something was wrong. Mark's best friend, Alex, a cheerful marketing manager, noticed his tension during their weekly coffee meetup. "You okay, man? You seem off," Alex said, his usual grin fading. Mark hesitated, then shared the receipt and Laura's odd behavior. Alex leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm. "Talk to her, Mark. Don't let this fester. You deserve the truth." The advice lingered, but Mark wasn't ready to confront her yet. He wanted to trust Laura, to believe their marriage was still solid. But the distance between them grew, her late nights at the studio stretching longer, her excuses sharper. Their home, once a haven, felt heavier each day. The mural in the living room, once a symbol of their bond, now seemed to mock him with its vibrant colors. Laura's laughter, which used to echo through the house, was replaced by distracted hums or quick apologies as she rushed out the door. Mark threw himself into work, hoping the numbers would drown out his doubts, but they only amplified the silence at home. He began to notice other signs. Her phone locked with a new password, her vague answers about her day. Each clue piled onto the last, building a case he wasn't ready to face. One night, unable to sleep, Mark sat in the dark living room, staring at the city lights beyond their window. He thought back to their early years, when Laura would drag him to art galleries, her eyes bright with dreams. They'd talk for hours, planning a future that felt unbreakable. Now, those memories felt like relics of a life that no longer existed. He wanted to fight for her, to pull her back from whatever was pulling her away, but he needed answers first. The receipt, still tucked in his drawer, was a reminder that the truth might not be what he hoped. As summer approached, Mark decided to try one last time. He planned a quiet dinner at home, cooking Laura's favorite pasta dish, hoping to spark a real conversation. When she walked in, her hair tousled from a long day, she smiled, a real smile for a moment. But as they sat down, her phone buzzed again. She glanced at it, her face tightening, and mumbled an excuse about a client email. Mark's heart sank. The dinner passed in near silence, the pasta growing cold on their plates. That night, as Laura slept, Mark made a decision. He couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. He needed to know the truth, no matter how much it hurt. The silence in the condo was suffocating as Sarah stood in the doorway, her eyes pleading for Matt to listen. He sat motionless, his gaze fixed on her, waiting for an explanation that could make sense of the betrayal he'd witnessed. "Matt, I didn't mean for this to happen," Sarah said, her voice trembling. "It's Lindsay. She's been in my head, twisting everything." Matt's jaw tightened. "Lindsay." The name was a thorn, sharp and persistent. "What does Lindsay have to do with you and Ryan?" he asked, his tone steady but laced with pain. Sarah sank onto the couch, her hands clasped tightly. She explained how Lindsay, her friend from college, had re-entered her life months ago, filling her with doubts about her marriage. "She kept saying I was stuck, that I was missing out," Sarah said, her voice cracking. "She made it sound like our life, our home, you, weren't enough." Matt felt a surge of anger, not just at Sarah, but at Lindsay's insidious influence. Sarah admitted she'd started joining Lindsay for late-night outings, parties she hid from Matt. "I thought I was just blowing off steam," she said, tears welling. But it was more than that. Matt leaned forward, his heart pounding. "More how?" Sarah hesitated, her gaze dropping to the floor. "Lindsay introduced me to Ryan," she whispered. "He was at those parties, always there, charming, attentive. Lindsay kept pushing me toward him, saying I deserved to feel free." Matt's chest tightened as Sarah confessed. She'd crossed the line, letting herself get too close to Ryan, betraying their vows in a moment of weakness. "It was a mistake," she said, her voice breaking. "I ended it weeks ago, but Lindsay won't let it go. She keeps threatening to tell you, to twist it into something worse." Matt stood, pacing the room, trying to process the weight of her words. Sarah's betrayal cut deep, but Lindsay's role made it uglier. A calculated manipulation, not just a lapse in judgment. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, his voice raw. "Why let her control you?" Sarah shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I was ashamed, Matt. I didn't know how to face you. Lindsay made me feel like I couldn't escape, like I'd already ruined everything." Matt's mind raced. He thought of Lindsay's smug smile at the party, the way she'd watched Sarah's panic unfold. There was something personal in her vendetta, something tied to him. He remembered a case from years ago when he'd refused to defend a friend of Lindsay's, a shady businessman caught in a fraud scheme. Lindsay had been furious, calling him self-righteous, swearing he'd regret it. Was this a revenge? Using Sarah to hurt him? The thought fueled his anger, but he pushed it aside. Right now, Sarah was the one who'd broken their trust. "Do you still love me?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah looked up, her eyes filled with desperation. "Yes, Matt. I never stopped. I got lost, but I want us back." Matt didn't know if he could believe her. Not yet. The pain was too fresh, the wound too raw. But her words stirred something in him, a flicker of the love they'd built over years. He sat across from her, his mind wrestling with what to do next. "If we're going to fix this," he said, his tone firm, "you need to cut Lindsay out. Completely. No more parties, no more lies." Sarah nodded, wiping her tears. "I will. I promise." But Matt saw the fear in her eyes, the shadow of Lindsay's grip still lingering. As they sat in the dim light, Matt felt the weight of the injustice. Not just Sarah's betrayal, but Lindsay's manipulation, turning their marriage into a battlefield. He didn't know if they could rebuild what was broken, but he knew he couldn't let Lindsay win. Sarah reached for his hand, her touch tentative. He didn't pull away, but he didn't hold on either. The road ahead was uncertain, and the truth was only beginning to surface. The days after Sarah's confession were a haze of tension and unspoken questions. Matt went through the motions at work, his mind replaying her words, the parties, Ryan, Lindsay's threats. Each night, he came home to Sarah's cautious attempts at normalcy. Dinner on the table, soft apologies in her eyes, but the distance between them was palpable. He wanted to believe she could break free from Lindsay's hold, but doubt gnawed at him. Was she truly done with that world, or was she still hiding something? Sarah, meanwhile, was unraveling under the weight of her guilt. She avoided her phone, terrified of Lindsay's next move. She'd blocked her number, but Lindsay's influence lingered like a ghost. Matt noticed her flinch at every notification, her hands trembling when she thought he wasn't looking. He wanted to help, but his own pain held him back. One evening, as they sat in silence over untouched coffee, Matt's patience snapped. "Sarah, if you're serious about fixing this, you need to tell me everything," he said, his voice low but firm. "What's Lindsay holding over you? Why are you so scared?" Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. "It's worse than I told you," she admitted, her voice barely audible. She revealed that Lindsay had recorded a conversation from one of the parties, twisting Sarah's words to sound like she was planning to leave Matt. "She's been using it to keep me in line," Sarah said, her hands twisting together. "She says she'll send it to you, make it look like I never loved you." Matt's blood ran cold. The recording wasn't just a threat. It was a weapon designed to destroy their marriage. He leaned back, his legal mind kicking into gear. "She's manipulating you, Sarah. This isn't just about guilt, it's control." He thought of Lindsay's vendetta, her anger from years ago when he'd refused to defend her friend. "This wasn't random. It was personal. We need to know what we're dealing with," he said. "Have you seen the recording?" Sarah shook her head. "She never showed it to me, just played a snippet. It's enough to scare me." Matt's jaw tightened. He didn't trust Lindsay to stop at threats. She'd already pushed Sarah into betrayal. What was next? The next morning, Matt dug deeper. He searched through Sarah's old messages, piecing together Lindsay's patterns. Her texts were a masterclass in manipulation. Subtle jabs at Sarah's confidence, veiled threats disguised as concern. One message stood out. "You think Matt's so perfect? Ask him about his secrets." Matt froze. Was Lindsay bluffing? Or did she know something he didn't? The seed of doubt planted, he pushed it aside, focusing on the task at hand. He contacted a colleague who specialized in digital forensics, asking how to handle a potential blackmail situation without breaking the law. "Document everything," his colleague advised. "If she's got a recording, you need proof of coercion." Sarah, meanwhile, was spiraling. She found an old photo from their honeymoon, tucked in a drawer, and clutched it, tears streaming down her face. The memory of Matt's laughter, his hand in hers, felt like a lifeline. She wanted to fight for him, but Lindsay's shadow loomed large. That night, as they lay in bed, Sarah turned to Matt, her voice trembling. "I'm so sorry I let her in," she whispered. "I thought I was stronger than this." Matt didn't respond, but he reached for her hand, a small gesture that carried the weight of their shared pain. The tension broke when Sarah's phone buzzed with an anonymous text. "You can't hide from me." Matt grabbed the phone, his anger flaring. "This ends now," he said. He urged Sarah to confront Lindsay, to call her bluff. "You're not alone in this," he told her. "We'll face her together." Sarah nodded, fear mixing with resolve. She knew Lindsay wouldn't let go easily, but she also knew she couldn't keep running. The betrayal had broken them, but it also woke her up. She was ready to fight, for Matt, for their marriage, for herself. Matt and Sarah knew the confrontation with Lindsay was inevitable, a storm they had to face to reclaim their lives. They sat together, planning every detail, Matt's legal instincts guiding their approach. "Don't engage emotionally," he advised Sarah. "She'll try to twist your words. Stay calm, state your boundaries, and walk away." Sarah nodded, her hands steady for the first time in weeks. She was terrified, but the thought of losing Matt forever was worse. She wanted to prove, to him, to herself, that she could break free. They chose a quiet coffee shop in Wicker Park, neutral ground far from Lindsay's usual haunts. Matt would be nearby, watching from corner table, ready to step in if things escalated. Sarah spent the morning preparing, flipping through old photos of her and Matt to anchor herself. One image from a camping trip showed Matt grinning as he tried to pitch a tent, Sarah laughing beside him. The memory steeled her resolve. She wasn't just fighting for their marriage. She was fighting for the woman she used to be before Lindsay's influence dulled her spark. At the coffee shop, Sarah arrived first, her heart racing as she scanned the room. Lindsay strode in moments later, her confident smirk faltering when she saw Sarah's composed expression. "So, you finally grew a spine," Lindsay said, sliding into the seat across from her. Sarah took a deep breath, her voice steady. This is over, Lindsay. You don't control me anymore. No more threats. No more games. Lindsay's eyes narrowed, her smile turning cold. You think you could just walk away? After everything I did for you? Sarah didn't flinch. You didn't help me. You used me. You pushed me into things I never wanted, made me doubt everything, my marriage, myself. Lindsay leaned forward, her voice low and venomous. You were nothing without me, Sarah. And Matt? He's not as perfect as you think. Ask him about the late nights he's been hiding. The words were a calculated jab, meant to sow doubt, but Sarah saw through it. She thought of the honeymoon photo, Matt's steady hand in hers, and held her ground. You're lying, she said firmly. And I'm done listening. Lindsay's composure cracked, her voice rising. You'll regret this. I've got that recording, and I can make sure Matt hears every word. Sarah's stomach twisted, but she didn't waver. Do it, she said, her eyes locked on Lindsay's. Send it. I've already told him everything. You have no power over me anymore. The words hung in the air, a declaration of freedom. Lindsay's face flushed with anger, her control slipping. She wasn't used to losing, especially not to someone she'd underestimated. Matt watched from his table, his heart pounding with pride and pain. Sarah's strength was undeniable, but he knew this was only half the battle. He'd been gathering evidence, screenshots of Lindsay's texts, notes from Sarah's therapy sessions detailing the coercion. If Lindsay tried to retaliate, he was ready to pursue a restraining order, using every legal tool at his disposal. He hated that it had come to this, but Lindsay's vendetta left no room for mercy. Sarah stood, her voice calm but resolute. I'm done, Lindsay. Stay out of my life. She turned to leave, ignoring Lindsay's sputtered protests. As she stepped outside, Matt joined her, his presence a quiet reassurance. You did it, he said softly, his eyes searching hers. Sarah nodded, tears prickling. I had to. For us. They walked away, the weight of Lindsay's shadow lifting with each step. But Matt knew the road to rebuilding trust would be long, and Sarah's courage was just the first step. Lindsay, left alone in the coffee shop, stared at her untouched coffee, the sting of defeat sinking in. For the first time, she was powerless, and it terrified her. Sarah's confrontation with Lindsay marked a turning point, but the scars of betrayal lingered. She threw herself into therapy, unpacking the insecurities Lindsay had exploited and the guilt that still gnawed at her. Matt, though proud of her stand, wrestled with his own pain. Trust, once their foundation, was now a fragile thread. Yet, he saw Sarah's effort, her honesty, her fight, and it gave him hope. They agreed to face the future together, one step at a time, no matter how uncertain. Sarah deleted every trace of Lindsay from her life, blocking her on every platform. She avoided old haunts, focusing instead on rebuilding her connection with Matt. They started small, attending a local charity event to clean up a community garden. As they worked side by side, planting seedlings under the spring sun, Matt felt a flicker of their old rhythm return. Sarah's laughter, tentative at first, grew genuine, and Matt caught himself smiling. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. At home, they faced new challenges. One evening, their ancient coffee maker sputtered and died mid-brew. Sarah groaned, but Matt grabbed a screwdriver, teasing, "We've survived worse than this." They tinkered with it together, laughing as coffee grounds spilled everywhere. The moment, mundane yet intimate, felt like a bridge to their past. Sarah reached for Matt's hand, her touch steady. "I'm not giving up on us," she said quietly. Matt nodded, his throat tight. "Neither am I." Matt kept a watchful eye on Lindsay's movements, prepared for any retaliation. He'd consulted a lawyer, ensuring their documentation of her threats was airtight. But Lindsay's silence was telling. Word spread among her circle. Her friends distanced themselves, unwilling to be tied to her toxic schemes. Alone, Lindsay faced the consequences of her actions, her influence crumbling. Matt took no pleasure in her downfall. His focus was on Sarah, on the life they were rebuilding. Their therapy sessions grew deeper, peeling back layers of hurt. Sarah spoke of her fear of losing Matt, how Lindsay had preyed on her doubts about being enough. Matt admitted his own struggle, how her betrayal had shaken his belief in their love. But he also shared his hope, his need to fight for what they had. The therapist guided them towards small acts of trust, sharing fears, setting boundaries, rediscovering joy. One session ended with Matt and Sarah holding hands, a silent vow to keep going. Months later, they stood in their backyard, planting a young maple tree. The act was deliberate, a symbol of growth rooted in their shared resolve. As they packed the soil, Sarah looked at Matt, her eyes clear. "I know I broke something," she said, "but I'll spend every day making it right." Matt met her gaze, his heart lighter than it had been in months. "We'll do it together," he replied. The tree stood tall, its leaves catching the light, a quiet promise of new beginnings. Lindsay's absence left a void, but it was one Sarah no longer feared. She'd faced her mistakes, owned them, and emerged stronger. Matt, too, had changed, less guarded, more open to the work of healing. Their marriage wasn't perfect, but it was theirs, forged anew through pain and perseverance. Justice wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming their truth, their love, their future. As they walked back inside, hand in hand, the city hummed around them, a reminder that even broken things could grow again.